So why don't you just quickly introduce yourselves to the crowd here, starting with you, John, just who you are, what you do.
Yeah. Hi, is this working? Yeah. Hi, I'm John from Skyscanner, and I lead the direct booking tribe at Skyscanner. So that's the part of the business where we're bringing the booking transaction, bringing that into the Skyscanner shopping experience. So I'm the product lead for that.
Suren from Cathay Pacific. I look after our e-commerce platforms, and soon we'll be taking over the third-party distribution, so NDC, big part of what I'll be doing.
I'm Vanni, Sanvincenti. I'm architect with the NDC team with IATA, and I deal with all the technical aspects of these standards.
Thank you very much. So, very quickly, can all the vendors, now not all of the OpenJob people, maybe just one, who do and support NDC in some way, shape, or form quickly stand up? Okay, so we see that there's quite a few vendors here that support NDC in some way, shape, or form. Now, can all the airline representatives quickly stand up? Anybody that's from an airline? There has to be more. There has to be more. Okay. Now, can those who already do NDC stay standing, and people who don't do NDC sit down? Okay. See, that's our problem. That's our problem. NDC, while we've been talking about it for years, a few, 2 or 3, it's been more than that. 2011 it started, right? While we've been talking about it for quite a while, the progression is rather slow. I think everybody agrees that it's a really good tool to enhance the offering. And Google earlier today, Meg was saying something about intent when selling and understanding. And I think the nice thing about NDC is it can help us to understand intent, because we're getting a lot more, in theory, when used right, information on what is somebody requesting. And from all those requests that we're giving, what is being selected and what is not being selected. So a good indication of intent. Now, just to clarify a little bit, NDC and One Order, just to get everybody sort of on the same level and understanding. So NDC, although the folks from IATA and Vanni might hit me up here afterwards, IATA says it's a messaging standard. Right? Well, I actually quite disagree with that, because it's a lot more than that. Yes, technically, the implementation and what IATA is defining is a messaging standard. But what it actually enables is a lot more, right? So NDC is more of a concept which enables a lot more. And it's around how can we as an airline, right, determine which content we would like to dish up to whoever is shopping. And that is the powerful part of NDC. It's not the APIs, those are, sorry, Vanni, but those are a bit boring, aren't they? It's just APIs. It's what it enables, which is way more important. Now, I think it's safe to say that NDC has matured technically. I think it's where we need to be. Yes, there's always going to be improvements and some changes, and I was talking to John from Skyscanner, you know, they can use it, and it's ready. But I also think you guys are still working on some of the standards and constantly improving the messages. But it's there and it's ready. We're going to discuss afterwards quickly why the rollout and the progress has been so slow. Right now, according to, I think about a week ago when I checked, there's 33 airlines that have certified NDC capability in some way, shape, or form. That's not very much. And if we look at the number of transactions running, it's extremely low. But that doesn't mean it's not good, and it doesn't mean it's not coming. So NDC is this whole shopping bit around how do I shop, how do I offer, what kind of content can I push out? And it just steps a little bit into, okay, now I'm going to create an order. Now I'm going to actually make that booking. Today it makes that booking by creating a PNR and an e-ticket, and in some cases an EMD. Now, we all know that a lot of the vendors, and OpenJaw is one of them, and these are the e-commerce retailing type of vendors, they've already sort of done away with PNRs and tickets in their own systems. They're already talking about super PNRs or even orders and those kind of things. Because the challenge with the PNR and the ticket and the EMD, it's all sort of separate, has a big overlap, not aligned, gets out of sync easily. So One Order is actually the natural extension to NDC, taking, okay, now we've done the shopping, we've said we want to create the order, now it's all about how do we manage that order. Let's get rid of the complexity of PNRs, tickets, and EMDs. Let's combine that into a single record, and let's use that record for service delivery, for fulfillment, and potentially even for the whole financial accounting bit, potentially. Now, like everything, it will depend. Different airlines will have different approaches. Different vendors will have different approaches. Some will keep the PNR and the ticket. Some will try to get rid of it. Some have already gotten rid of it. Because actually all we're doing is we're, in the full service carrier world, mimicking what a lot of the low-cost airlines have been doing for years. So we're actually not inventing something new. We're just trying to get as efficient as others already are. So just last quote here. I mean, yesterday, David Rogers, when he's talking about the digital transformation, he said, it's not about technology, or digital transformation is not technology. He said, it's about the way you think. And I think while NDC and One Order may not be super innovative, but the change and the mindset change, and to really take advantage of it for the airlines, for the buyers, for everybody, it's also about changing the way you think, because it's going to enable a lot of different things. So with that, let's head right into the panel discussion, right? So let's just get the IATA perspective quickly on the status of NDC and where you think NDC is today. What's been done? What sort of remains from a standards perspective?
Right. So we released the first official schemas 2 years ago, roughly. And since then, they've been piloted, tested, rolled out. As you said earlier, we have 35 airlines currently deploying them in production. Volumes are still low, but that's set to increase. We are expecting an additional 10 airlines by the end of the year. We have some 40-odd IT providers and aggregators currently certified, many more involved in production, just not yet certified. And we're reaching a stage where the schemas are going to stabilize. Of course, there's a lot of work involved in evolving them, extending them to fulfill all the business requirements from the airlines. And that's the other difficulty, because they have to be able to fulfill all the business models. So the schemas, in a sense, are business agnostic, but at the same time, it's because they have to be able to cater for all the airlines' requirements. So this process takes time, and we're reaching a level of stabilization now.
So if the messages are ready, Suren, why would you even do NDC then? What are your benefits as an airline? There must be some good reason to do it. What is it?
I think there are a few good reasons to do it. And I think your point at the start about it's not just the standard. I think that's something we heard pretty early on, particularly from the naysayers. That's just another standard. I think for an airline like us that spends so much money on product, we need to be able to differentiate that product to all our customers. And we, at the moment, do a certain percentage offline through travel agents, through OTAs, etc. It's a fairly large number. And we need to be able to reach these customers with better information to make a good purchase decision. And we haven't really been able to do that until now. So NDC is really part of our merchandising strategy and sort of omni-channel merchandising strategy. And it's really helped us propel that. We weren't having the conversations before NDC came along. So NDC's sort of forced sort of the old heads in the airlines to say, well, okay, we can actually do something now in the agency channel. We better start thinking about how our offers are going to go out, how our product's going to be represented, across all the channels, including in the agency channel.
So it's removing complexity and removing a barrier that you had before to enable you to have that different conversation with your customers.
Yeah, that's right. And it needed to be a customer-focused benefit first, right? And we know customers love our product, but we know that for many of them, they can't differentiate us in most sort of OTA environments, or even at travel agencies. I mean, typically your local sales ports are engaging with travel agencies and giving them documentation about what your product is, and it might be up to date or it might not be up to date. So we know even agents, they want to serve their customers better, they want to be able to tell them more, but they just haven't had the capability. So really it is removing a barrier. But I will say that our focus has been on the big digital players, the Skyscanners, the OTAs, corporates, etc., as opposed to the traditional travel agents who we think will take a little bit longer to bring on board.
Okay. So speaking of metas and OTAs, John, so I did realize something yesterday. You guys are part of the C-Trip group, right?
Yeah.
And you're the only one that doesn't have an animal in the logo, because yesterday we learned there's camels and dolphins and a dragon, I think, and you guys have a cloud.
Just got a cloud, yeah.
Well,
we could add a bird, no.
Room for improvement, that's all right. But in terms of the meta search and giving that or transposing those benefits that the airline wants to pass on, is that where Skyscanner, as one of the most active metas right now in the NDC space, is that where you see the benefits, and how can you give that to the end consumer that's using your site?
Yeah, I mean, for us, just picking up on that point, it's all about giving the traveller a better experience, and that's where we see NDC coming in. So we've talked a lot about moving away from just price comparison and towards product comparison, and NDC begins to give you this kind of vocabulary that allows our providers to do that, both in shopping actually, but also in booking, which is where I'm most interested. And so we sort of see we used to call facilitated booking, we now call it direct booking, because we actually think it's generally a direct booking which just happens to happen on Skyscanner, because that's where the person began their shop and their search, and if they're on a mobile in particular, our belief is that it's just inauthentically mobile for you to find a price in one place, press a button, a browser tab to pop open, you're somewhere else, completely different UI, you need to kind of refamiliarize yourself with what's going on. So we're trying to deliver that consistent, seamless, frictionless experience for the traveller, whilst also delivering what is still a direct purchase for the partner, for the airline. And I think NDC gives us the option to do that, because we can give the airline, or in some cases the travel agent, a storefront where they can complete that purchase, which is, and we go further, which is why it's a direct booking, because it's a branded storefront. It's not all about being on Skyscanner. So the branding is there, but also critically all the additional products and upsells and offers are represented there, and that's very much where NDC comes in, and that's where we really see the value and are seeing the value. Yesterday,
Hainan Airways said something I found very interesting. Now, this is obviously, I think, from their perspective in the Chinese market, but you serve different markets than the Chinese market. What are your main 2 or 3 markets for Skyscanner?
I mean, a lot of the European markets are very strong. Obviously, UK is the strongest, but growing very quickly in Asian markets,
okay,
and also the States.
Okay. So what Hainan said yesterday was the customer needs are changing. Customers want more products and services. Is that something that you're finding as an endpoint to the customer as well in the markets that you primarily serve?
Yeah, I mean, certainly we, I suppose people always get this phrase wrong. The proof of the pudding is in the eating. And we just see it in the results. So the whole thing with us trying to offer those services in the booking experience is the indication that is better is that we see better conversion rates from customers. We see in a lot of cases where we're able to connect up the additional offers and services, we see an uplift in uptake on those offers and services versus what would be happening on airline.com. And so we continually see validation around direct booking, as we call it, and around what NDC is bringing into that just through the metrics. Also, kind of qualitatively, when we do user testing around it, it's received very well by the users. So that's obviously what they want to see in their experience on Skyscanner.
Okay. And so, Suren, in terms of those products and services, I mean, let's be clear. On your website, you have all the possibilities. You can show everything the way you want, however you want, whenever you want, right? Through the, let's say, the traditional indirect channels, Teddy, not so much, right? Now, with NDC and you finding the new output channels through you know, the metas and the OTAs, well, with the messages, you'll be able to convey your whole product, but are you worried about how they're going to actually show that and which parts that they're going to show? Is that a challenge that you're also thinking about?
Absolutely. You know, we get a bit closer to the customer using NDC, but we do still rely on the partner to present that information to the customer. So I think what we haven't yet worked out, and you know, this is why so many of us are doing pilots, is, you know, well, how much effort is it to activate a new partner? So, you know, we go work with Skyscanner. They've got their own interface. We may be controlling the content that they show, but you still have control of how that gets to the customer. So certainly it's something that we've thought about. We haven't really deployed. We haven't deployed yet, so we don't have any pudding. But we will in the future, and we want to understand how that will work. But it looks like it will be partner by partner, so there'll still be effort to activate.
Okay, so I think we've established there's a good need, there's a good business case, I think, both for the airline and for the distribution partners in terms of richness of content. One thing, Vanni, that we've also discussed many times with NDC is trying to enable the airline to create the own content. As far as I know, and I might be wrong, but all the airlines using today still rely on the traditional filed fares somehow and pull all of that. Are we seeing any movement from an industry perspective, or does IATA have insight into airlines that are trying to do something else, trying to get more dynamic, trying to get more independent from the ATP co-filed fares and those kind of structures?
I'd say that level of transition is probably what's going to take quite a while, because it's difficult to cut the umbilical cord from your traditional indirect channels. So that's going to take a while. What is happening with NDC is a sort of, for the moment, a parallel run. Clearly, we still have tickets, PNRs, EMDs, but we also have NDC implementation. So it's about shifting towards that, the order management and offer management, that single order on which everything hinges, and then doing away with the legacy fare filing and that kind of stuff. But it's easy to say. Now the airlines are able to push their full portfolio of products and services through the indirect channel, and the same, in allowing the passenger to sort of browse through these services in the same way they would on the regular airline.com website. And in addition to that, and when things are sent back to the aggregator and seller, the bunch of offers dynamically constructed and priced by the airlines, they are presented side by side, so effectively have comparative shopping, and this is what gives the passenger the ability to make an informed decision, including all those ancillary services that are lacking today in the current indirect channels.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, dynamic fares and dynamic pricing, it's absolutely where we want to go, but you're dealing with revenue management organizations typically that have been doing, you know, the same thing for a long time. So you need to first transform your revenue management team before you can really have a reasonable conversation about dynamic fares. So the technology seems to be there. You know, vendors are coming and talking to us about this all the time. But it's actually, again, coming back to mindset and ways of working and these sorts of things that is actually holding us back from moving forward there. So.
Yeah. So just, we're going to do a bit of a Q&A at the end, but if anybody has questions related to, you know, some of the questions and topics we're discussing, just, you know, hold up your hand and we'll take those questions in between as well. Absolutely no problem at all. Before I move on to some of the other challenges which I want to address, I want to take that with the ancillaries and the products and that kind of thing and ask Skyscanner, you know, Is it going to be a challenge when airlines start throwing more content at you, more ancillaries? Well, look, we can offer this product and this service, and here's an offer for this passenger that looks like this, and another one that looks like this. Can you show him both, or all 3 or 5? I mean, you only have so and so much screen real estate, especially as we're moving more and more into mobile. I mean, isn't that going to be tough?
It'd be a nice problem to have. But yes, I mean, I think it's really true. And we were talking about voice platforms and bots. So like I guess the current reality of the problem is smaller screens. And so the importance of being able to present stuff in a really kind of crisp and consistent way that users can actually make a comparison and interpret very quickly is critical. But I was just thinking about when you get onto Alexa and maybe you're trying to buy a flight on Alexa, and you say, tell me about these 3 fares, and then Alexa starts reading out that wall of capitalized text that you get through that we have to wrangle at the moment, and that's just clearly not going to work. But that is what consumers will be expecting in the years to come.
Open job. Did you guys train Alexa to read the whole fare rules top to bottom for no, but it is a problem, right? So
Yeah.
you know, how much content can you actually display? So how much can airlines then sensibly send back to their channels to say, here are the things that we have, without missing an opportunity of selling something, right? It's a challenge.
Yeah, I think you need to adapt to context. So personalization is really important. So you know, one experience I have personally is I travel on EasyJet all the time, and must have bought 200 flights from EasyJet in the last 3 years. And every time I buy a flight, they ask me if I want to pick a seat, and every time I've said no. So at some point, it'd be worth maybe not asking that question. And that's and I know EasyJet themselves want to go in that direction, and that's in theory on Skyscanner you can see additional benefit with that, because you can see behavioural patterns when purchasing across a whole range of partners, and then apply them to the specific partner, whoever that might be at that point in time. So if we can learn user preferences, then we can begin to apply them to whichever booking funnel the traveller's chosen on that occasion. So I think adapting to context. I mean, the other thing is mobile versus desktop. You certainly see in some cases you're more successful upselling on desktop because maybe people have got a bit more time to think about it. And also the type of trip they're taking. So there's lots of different kind of levers you can pull to tweak what you offer to make sure you're actually offering something that's relevant to the traveller at that point in time.
Okay. We had a quick discussion before, John, around your role, not your role, Skyscanner's role in the market, meta search versus OTA, because I think we've heard many times, and somebody said yesterday as well, meta search is moving more and more into OTAs. Now, are you a meta search or are you a up-and-coming OTA? Where do you stand there?
So we are meta search. We're not OTA. So we continue to be what we've always been, which is a place where someone who's looking to book some travel can see all the options, compare all the options, and make an informed choice. The fact that the booking now takes place on Skyscanner, in some cases, I just see it as an expansion of that surface area. It's about allowing the user to have one single kind of frictionless, seamless experience. But we don't take the money. It's literally just an alternative front end for either the OTA or the airline that the traveller is buying from. We don't provide customer service. And also different to an OTA, the onward management of that customer around that trip and that customer's data goes to the partner as well. So it's really it's the same as what used to happen with a meta. It's just the redirect, as we call it, happens on Skyscanner. So it's beneficial for the traveller and it's beneficial for the partner because they're more likely to book. We all know that every single step you add in any e-commerce journey, you lose people. So yes, that's how we are.
Very good.
Remain to be different.
Look, I'd like to talk about two challenges that I personally think are hindering sort of the expansion and the growth of NDC. And that's Interline on one hand, and the GDS on the other. And it's not about bashing the GDS, but it's asking the question, you know, we've got two of the major GDS here in the Western world at least, which are only level 1 certified as aggregators. The biggest one is still in progress in certification. But at the same time, for a lot of the traditional network airlines, it's a huge channel, it's a huge distribution channel, right? So it's lacking, the NDC progression is going to lack a little bit until there's not some uptake there. Are we seeing some changes here that they're going to accept this as well?
I couldn't comment on their behalf, but what I can say is that the GDSs are committed to NDC. And most of them are actively involved with our industry working groups that are tasked with evolving the schemas. Of course, they are dealing at the heart of indirect ticket sales today, so they're very well placed to fulfill those key roles needed for the rolling out of NDC at scale. They have the connection, they have the experience with the infrastructure and dealing with all these transactions. So they're very well placed, and if there are any in the room today, I'd encourage them to just keep up the efforts in supporting their airlines and agents in this transition, or to put it in context, this digital transformation.
Yeah. Is that a reason, Suren, why you think airlines aren't jumping on the train faster? Because it's that big channel is not reachable just yet? Or is that not really a factor? Is it more right now about the other channels?
Well, I think many airlines are still figuring it out. People are investing, we're investing, but there are still people even within Cathay that are trying to get their head around it, right? So I think it's important for us to just do something, try and do that in the most cost-effective way possible, and then we can show some results and then move from there. But I think there are some other factors. I think the two you mentioned are probably big ones, but also shopping requests. GDS, for all their faults, handle a massive number of shopping requests on a daily basis. If we start to bring those directly back into our infrastructure, that's a problem. And of course, there are many vendors who we've spoken to help us with this, but I think that's a big challenge. And even if we use one of these shopping solutions, we still have some constraints on our PSS side. So I think shopping and this sort of massive expansion in shopping requests is certainly on the minds of many airlines and many vendors, including PSS vendors. And I think the other one is more commercial, and it's how do you bring people along, bring your third parties along? I think Skyscanner, kind of trailblazers, and we love them for it. But there are others, mainly big traditional travel agencies who are sitting back. TMC is starting to be interested, but how do you convert agents who get incentives from the GDS over to your direct channel? So we start thinking about, okay, well, if it's not cost, or if we can't give them monetary incentives, then it needs to be product incentives. And I think that's a big area that we haven't yet cracked, but that we're aware of and we're working on.
But I mean, having said that, there still is enough incentive for you to start NDC despite the speed that the big distributors are going at, because there's enough other channels like the Skyscanners and OTAs and others that will support it for you.
Oh no, absolutely. I think it's our responsibility to move forward with it. I think
no reason to hold back.
Yeah, no, I don't think so, and I don't think we should.
Yeah.
And we've seen a lot of interest from not just metasearch, and it's not just Skyscanner. There are other metasearch, Kayak's quite active, Google pretty keen. All these guys are talking to us. Corporates, it's really interesting with corporates, and what we're starting to see now is when we're bidding for a corporate account, these corporates are actually asking us, well, are you NDC capable? Can you come to us directly? We had one corporate, won't name, but actually came to us and said, we will only consider direct connectivity. Right? So that's starting to change in a big way. And I think there was a good chart up yesterday about how long it takes change to kind of be achieved. And I think we're sort of in that sort of ebb.
Just don't say the hockey stick thing, because I'm a bit depressed that Canada
fair enough.
Didn't win the World Cup.
But I absolutely believe in it, and I think we all need to be pushing forward.
Yeah. So let's talk about the other challenge, which is Interline. Is that holding you back at all? There's no carriers doing NDC Interline to your knowledge, is there? There's none to mine. But
yeah, no, we're just starting to add the capabilities.
Yeah.
But yeah, It's early stages.
Was that an important factor for you to think about?
It's certainly an important factor. It's not holding us back.
It's not holding.
We know it's being worked on. It'll be cracked eventually. It's just not something we can focus on in the short term, but we can still focus on other partners.
What about from Skyscanner's perspective, right? The interline journeys, a lot of people don't fly just back and forth, right? They're going to fly onwards. Now that's something that if you're using your NDC interface with BA, I guess that's the one that's most prominent, has been in all over the place, right?
Yeah.
They can't offer interline journeys there.
Yeah.
So does that mean you just have to have a backup plan until that point?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing really. There's enough volume and enough value there to not hold us back and make us kind of wait for universal adoption. And so, I don't see the traditional kind of exit to airline.com kind of going away overnight. So, yeah, it's just not a barrier for us. We've just taken the view with NDC that, we went very early with it. I think we did the first meta connection with BA back in 2015. And we've just kind of bet on it as a standard because we know in the long term it will benefit the traveller and it's going to benefit Skyscanner. But kind of went into it with our eyes open that it would mean we'd be working with kind of a fairly immature standard initially, and really happy to be kind of involved in helping to shape it and help fill some of the gaps in that. So that's great for us. But we're also sort of having to wait for the industry to catch up. And kind of a bit impatient, but it's definitely seen huge momentum now actually, and there's several kind of airline partners who are developing APIs at the moment and working with us very actively. So it's good for us to be at the front of the queue for that. So yeah, we've just kind of taken the view that it's the right thing to do for us, but also clearly for the industry.
So let's switch gears quickly to One Order. We're not going to touch One Order as deeply as NDC because it's a lot newer. But one thing I do want to say is sort of as a closing comment to NDC. What we see a lot when we're working with airlines and finding out NDC strategy and looking at products is that it seems to be that no airline right now is putting e-commerce RFIs, RFPs, or having discussions around e-commerce and platforms without having NDC in there. And without expecting that platform providers, OpenJaw, and those fully support NDC. I mean, so it's become something that even if an airline's not actively going to use it just now, it has to be part of the platform. That's what we're seeing. One Order isn't quite that far along yet, is it, Vanni? Can you tell us where One Order stands?
We're going to be launching beta standards in about 6 months. So. I think we're going to start seeing, a lot of the simpler implementations take advantage of that. Those that don't need to transition from legacy to ticketless, because it's really all about removing that complexity. It's the next logical extension, as you said earlier, to NDC. It brings fulfillment. And it removes this complexity of the 3 record architecture, which is the PNR, the ticket, and the EMDs. And so first, we need to put in the capability, which is NDC. So you have your offer management system, your order management system, and then you introduce the simplicity after, which isn't simple on its own. But once you have that, you can you can do interlining with ticketless carriers, well, between traditional ticketing carriers and ticketless carriers. You start to see a lot more potential. So we're almost there as well.
So, Suren, I know it's early days for airlines, and a lot of airlines haven't put too much focus on One Order, but do you see benefits to the One Order concept in these early days?
I think that the theory makes sense. I think the concept, absolutely, support the concept. It's hard not to support the concept. And if you read the documentation, it's hard to argue against it. I think it's more, if NDC was a challenge, and I think we spent 12 to 18 months lobbying internally to get people around to invest. One Order is going to be even tougher. So I think we need to understand, and I think One Order's at the stage NDC was at probably in 2013, 2014, where it was just a few trailblazers really spending a lot of time trying to understand it. I think we have a couple of people who are looking at it, but they're not, I wouldn't say necessarily actively involved or whatever. But I mean, the concept, absolutely. If it's going to make servicing easier for the customer, if there's going to be benefits for the back-end financial systems, if it's going to simplify that process, absolutely. Why would we not support that? But then again, what's the cost of making it happen? How long is it going to take? What's going to be the impact to the rest of our infrastructure? These are all unanswered questions. So I think we need to get to that next level of understanding before we can seriously consider spending any money on it.
What about, John, for the end consumer or the companies serving that end, or being the interface to the end consumer? Is One Order relevant to you? And do you think that there's benefits that you can pull out of this One Order initiative?
I haven't thought too much about how Skyscanner specifically would use it, but I mean, I just, like everyone says, it's hard not to support it as a traveller advantage and something that's way better than what we have now. And I guess it will help anyone who's selling tickets to provide better service. Not that we're providing service. So yeah, I mean, very much in favour of it, but not something that's on our radar right now.
Have any of the airlines in the room started to think about One Order at all? Just a hands up. Nobody. That's how early it is. Oh, there we go. Honair. There we go. Very good. So let's open up to some questions. I saw a question back here. Mark, can we have a microphone?
Hi, I think it's a question for Jonathan, but it'd be interesting to get Suren's view on this as well. Direct booking, the customer books, granted you're not the merchant of record and you're not the customer service and so on, but for that critical piece of the customer engagement, you're completing the booking on Skyscanner.
Yeah.
So, and with Kayak and Google making similar moves, what's the impact that's going to have on airlines and OTAs who are paying a lot for traffic, for customer acquisition, but they're essentially losing the opportunity for in-path cross-sell of a lot of their own or partner products. Granted, you're making a better experience for the consumer, but potentially has a commercial impact on ancillary sales because they're not getting they're getting a booking rather than getting traffic.
Yeah, I mean, the intention is that the airline owns their own booking funnel, which is why we talk about it as being a storefront, and which is why we like NDC, because it makes all of this possible. So not only is it branded, I mean that's just a cosmetic thing, but in theory, anything that is offered on the airline's direct website should be possible for us to offer it on Skyscanner. And for those offerings to be configured based, eventually based on the specific traveller. And so currently we have the ability to sell seats, to sell the fare families, and then optional extras, which can mean all manner of things. So if you look at the Scoot integration that we have live at the moment, they're selling everything up to and including meals and something called a snooze comfort kit. So we are supporting the things that they would be selling on their own website, and we're kind of constantly expanding the suite of kind of options that are available there. So we really need to make that work, or it's not going to work for the partner. So that's the onus is on that to include that capability.
Go ahead.
Am I on? Yeah, no, I'd agree. I mean, I think on the ancillary side, we need to see it in practice, but we're not as concerned about that side of things, about the upsells, etc. I think what we are a little bit concerned about is the acquisition piece and the traffic piece that you mentioned, and what does it mean for airline.com in the future? When you get the Skyscanners and the Googles and whoever providing that front end, what does it mean for airline.com? So what's it going to do to our distribution strategy over the next 10, 15, 20 years? I think things will change. I mean, in the next few years, once Skyscanner gains a lot of traction, once Google Flight Search gets more people signed up, where does airline.com fit? And where do we direct our investment?
I think that was really interesting, though, that reference to, what was a Scoot, right?
Scoot, yeah.
You're not using NDC.
No, that's
Navitalia. So here's the interesting thing, right? And it's no disrespect, because the messages are super, because it's a standardization, right? And you don't have to implement something for Scoot and something for somebody else. You can just use NDC. But conceptually, we're already doing this stuff anyways, right? With many airlines, especially the low cost, right? So all we're actually doing here is a very important step, is trying to standardize and make it easier for everybody to do. So that's a good point. Any other questions?
Yeah, sorry, just a quick follow-up on that. I mean, the snooze kit is a fine example, but the big established OTAs make most of their money off hotels and to a lesser extent car rental and travel insurance. And that's not coming from the airlines. So someone is taking that, you know, the opportunity to monetize that traffic. And if you're doing direct booking, I can't see that as anything other than a threat to the OTAs, regardless of whether you say you're not an OTA. Is it something you're kind of demonetizing that in a way, or disrupting it, or?
I mean, so yeah, cross-sell to hotels and car hire, we don't offer that in direct booking at all at the moment. So I suppose one thing to say is the data I've seen and what I've been told is there's a lot more take-up of that post-sale. So and we do nothing to inhibit that, because the airline or the OTA still has access to the customer data and can go and offer them other services after the booking's taken place. In terms of what happens in line with booking, we haven't gone there yet, and we don't have a kind of concrete position on how we're going to make that sort of thing available. So yeah, it's still under discussion.
Other questions? There you go, John.
Okay, I'm going to be a little bit controversial here. Anyone who's kind of seen me at conferences before knows that I've always been a big advocate for standards, but I've maybe changed my view a little bit. Brian talked yesterday about new APIs and kind of how they define new APIs, and they can define them really quickly, and they can auto code generate from APIs and so on. As a tech guy, I look at NDC and it's XML standards. It's 5 years out of date already. I want REST APIs. You know, I can implement an interface to something like Facebook or Twitter in a week. And the problem with something like an API that's trying to be all things to all men is that there's so many optional elements in it that you've got to do a separate implementation for everybody anyway. And I actually think it would be a great deal more flexible if airlines could just use modern technology to put out new APIs whenever they want that sell the products that they want to sell, and we could consume them much more quickly than we could consume something like NDC. So just kind of looking for a reaction.
So your question is, are these standards obsolete?
My question is, I suppose, is it simpler and quicker just for each individual airline to just put out a new API?
Sure. No, you make a lot of good points, actually. The good news is that we are working on delivering a first set of core messages in JSON by the end of the year. So it is on our radar. And we're very perceptive to the needs of implementers and developers. They are asking for REST, JSON. XML is heavy and clunky, but the complexity is intrinsic. It's there. We can't just make it go away. And in terms of the data required in the messages, all these optional fields, not sure when to use them and how, that's more of an educational thing. We can't get rid of them. They are there to support business functions. And this is B2B. When we look at these more nimble APIs, the Facebooks, the LinkedIn, and the Flickrs, and all these, and tweets, then it's really not the same thing.
No, I understand they're there and I understand they need to be there, but my point, I suppose, is that I don't have the ability to just implement once, in fact. I have to implement for each and every partner anyway. So therefore, a different API for everybody wouldn't make a whole heap of a lot of difference to me.
That's a good point. And that was actually one of our main challenges. In the last 6 months, we've tried to remove as much of this flexibility as possible. So we're reintroducing the rigidity that the standards need to be able to be interpreted in only one way, as opposed to, well, actually, I can perform the same function in 10 or 15 different ways. So we're converging towards one implementation style, and then all this gets also immortalized in the best practices and the documentation we provide that's adjacent to the standards. But this is all work in progress. But we are addressing these concerns.
We have a glaring red screen telling us time is up, but we will take one more question because everybody else took the liberty to run over a little bit as well. We're going to do the same.
Yeah, so just one question on the NDC standards and all. So, just taking from what Mark was talking about, distribution of high margin ancillaries, we're talking about hotels, cars and all. So fine, I understand, we can distribute flight and air ancillaries through NDC. Maybe we'll have to distribute the other products through another API. But when we talk about one order, where does this all fit? Because my airline is selling all products. How do I put them in a single order if there's no placeholders for that? So what's IATA's plans of including those ancillaries? So I'm talking about hotels and car rentals. How would IATA support that in the NDC standard, and what are the plans?
What you're talking about, what exactly, how one order will facilitate
the hotels and car rentals. So they are high margin ancillaries for airlines. We can see,
So I can't hear you.
So the hotels and car rentals, a lot of airlines are selling millions of ancillaries right now.
Okay.
So if I have to create an order, one order means there should be a single entry that includes all products,
right.
Flights, bags, seats, hotels, car rentals. So how do you, what's your plans to solve that?
Well, so NDC gives the airline the capability to sell anything also from like adjacent providers. All the peripheral service providers are brought in, and as I said earlier, everything hinges on that single order. So there's a master record of those services, no matter where they're coming from, but sold from one channel, the airline, managed centrally. So anything that changes in terms of the delivery status information, the fulfillment, the payment allocation, all that is then pushed centrally to the airline responsible for maintaining that master record. So all that's just made easier from, it's a bit like interlining. I mean, it's one central airline managing that order, that single order for between them and the passenger.
Yeah, no, my point is that there are no placeholders right now in the current NDC schemas for hotels or cars. So how would I store that information?
Placeholders?
Yeah, so NDC currently doesn't support hotels.
I'd say we're still working on that. It's
Thank you.
it's hard to say.
All right. So with that, if anybody has any more burning questions afterwards, I think the gentleman will be around after the next session that's going on. Thank you very much. Thank everybody that I stole quotes from. And thanks, John, Suren, and Vanni for the information.